Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Again, thanks for your time and that you're putting into this on an ongoing basis, on a weekly basis. And I appreciate what you're giving us. Our agenda that Jeremy sent out has a couple of items on it, but I want to, it calls for us to review the proposals as they relate to the comp plan and to the select board goals. I want to amend that a little bit. A couple of things we talked about last week was input on zoning amendments that might be required, and also any incentives needed from the developers that would fall on the town to address. And Jeremy, do you want to talk about that for a minute and let us kind of get a sense of what we need to provide input on for that?
Sure. Thanks. And I'm sorry I didn't get anything out to you more than that. And I forgot those on the agenda. I've had a lot going on, obviously, and then got some issues here at the home. So zoning changes. The Crane Sport project works within the BR zone. Don't see any issues with that. Obviously the Friends of Tannery Park, that would work as well in the BR zone. The Habitats project for 3 house lots up front would need zone change, either a zone change like a map amendment, or you could do that through a zoning amendment allowing residential uses on the first floor, because right now in the BR zoning district, residential uses are not allowed on the first floor. And that works. That's the same for Northland Dovetails project. Residential uses cannot be on the first floor in the BR. And Dovetail would also require some changes to the parking standards, which I think is long overdue in Camden, frankly, looking at parking requirements. But they certainly would need some, how towns handle those kind of parking requirements is they end up having a different standard for workforce housing or affordable housing projects. They have a different standard, generally at one space per unit. So those are the zoning amendments that would really need to happen. And keep in mind that, if we're talking getting to something to November or to June's ballot, we need to be talking about these things now. So I may be working on the planning board with the planning board in the short term, just on these couple of issues, because I think they're worthwhile to have as it is. And so I think we can get something going on that end, whether or not either one of these projects plays out or it doesn't. I think it's important for the town to address parking changes, parking requirements. And the BR not allowing residential on the first floor is what it is. And I get that. That's the intent, is to preserve commercial use, on the street level. I understand that. But, I think in this location, I think it could go either way. I think that's an issue the town needs to have further discussions about. Roger?
I don't know as I understand the basic issue here, but is it the parking requirement is really too restrictive now, requiring more spaces than are needed, or is it the other way around? Right now, congregate housing can get away with 1 space per unit for congregate housing, but all other dwelling units in town need 2 units or 2 spaces per dwelling unit. And it's clearly they don't have Dovetail wouldn't have enough land for that. But I will say, that's our standard of 2 per dwelling unit is about as strict as it comes to requiring max build out of parking. It's not in line with other communities at all when you're looking at affordable housing or workforce housing projects. And, what about the farmer's market? I live not too, I see on Saturdays, there must be 40, 50 cars along Washington Street and in the parking lot of the former tannery. So is there a standard in the zoning ordinance for that?
There's not really, Roger. There's not, and that you'd have to go to the Institute of Traffic Engineers manual standards to see what that is. Parking requirement is for a farmer's market. Likely what they would do is we'd have to look at studies that have been done elsewhere, because oftentimes those Institute of Traffic Engineer documents, they don't, all uses that are out there don't fit right in with a certain, use that's in their book. I mean, it's an interesting, I've not, the farmer's market's been here and prior to me coming, but the farmer's market has a lease for a certain portion of that property when they go there in Saturdays and Wednesdays. It's for a certain portion of the property. It's not for the entire property. And I don't know if the town ever envisioned, I think they just probably envisioned the farmer's market customers would be parking on the tannery side, but we don't lease the parking lot as being used as a parking lot for the tannery to the tannery, or license it, so I don't know how to really address that, Roger. I think that's probably something that should be looked at going forward. I also, from a planning perspective, I really don't want to always have to like dive into parking all the time, because a lot of times things just work out. I think the more sometimes we talk about ordinances to meet certain requirements, you could talk and talk and talk and try to plan for it. But the reality is, I mean, the farmer's market's been there for all this time. Parking's worked. We don't get a lot of complaints about it. I think people understand what it's like and they get accustomed to it, and they work their way through the parking, and they figure out what's the best time to come. I think it all works together. So it's a good point, Roger. We haven't talked about that. I will say Pineland, Pine or Northland's group, their proposal, they would allow use of the parking lot for farmers market. It's pretty evident in their proposal. And if you're talking, I'm just bringing them up now as well as Habitat right now, because those are the two that would require zoning amendments. And Habitat, their proposal again is for the 3 lots up front. The town then would do whatever the town wants to do to the rear, and we can always continue parking out back and facilitate further parking there. That makes sense.
I know we don't have a parking committee anymore. Who gets the job? Which committee gets the job of dealing with parking issues in town anyway now? Is it the planning board?
I think it's probably myself and Audra and the planning board when we need to, and Randy, obviously. But then myself and the planning board when we need to start really looking at, amendments to the parking standards. I had tried it when I first got here, looking at parking in the downtown to exempt parking in the downtown for uses. People did not like that a whole heck of a lot. And there were some other priorities at the time. So I think it's appropriate to look at parking. I mean, there's no reason to build sites out just because a parking ordinance says you need to build X number of parking spaces. Just the reality of life. I mean, that's traditional zoning going back into the 70s and 80s. Things are very different now when you look at parking, how communities are planning for parking.
Right.
I think too, a lot of times you look at shared parking, like an apartment building that everybody's out at work during the day, when the farmer's market would be there on a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, they would be parking when the workers are gone, kind of thing. So that often works in a lot of places. That would be a different issue, I'd imagine, on Saturdays, but.
Mm-hmm. So that's it really on zoning issues that I see. I mean, there, I did not do a full-on review, like an engineering planning review of every one of these proposals, because it's not in enough detail to do that. But from general compliance with the zoning ordinance, Habitat's project would need zoning amendment, as would Northland's, for parking and as well as use. Outside of that, the TIF, I guess we could get into incentives. I think we all had the conversation, or you all had the conversation last week about Crane Sport and whether or not that $250,000 was a purchase price, or was that $250,000 going to river restoration or whatever it was. That is a great question. I think that we should, and so throughout this process, my intent has not been to try to reach out to any of these entities to ask questions or to get additional information from them. That's what I think you all are developing, and it's going to come out of the select board. So I think we have that question about Cranesport, and obviously Northland is looking for a TIF. And we would need to amend our TIF district in town and for affordable housing. That is not a out of this world suggestion to do that. This is done routinely, and we talked about it a little bit last time. This is routinely done in order to make affordable housing projects work in Maine. It's one of the only ways to really do it. That combined with low income tax credits and all those other federal or state incentives that are out there for projects like this. But TIFs are one way that we can do that.
Excuse me, I just had a text from Ellis. He can't get in. Could somebody resend him the invitation?
Sure. Janice, did you hear that?
Yeah, I'll get it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could probably do it. Am I hosting, co-hosting?
You should be. You're an alternate host.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't
I can
say
do it
I
if you
am.
want.
Doesn't say I am.
Okay.
I am doing this through Office 365 though, Janice. So
Oh,
that's,
good.
yeah, getting there.
Yeah. Let me just get off YouTube here.
So Jeremy, back to incentives with Northland, we talked about the TIF. They're also asking for housing tax credits and subsidies and things, but that's out of the purview of the town, right? That's between them and someone else.
Right. Those are state incentives.
Yeah.
They're getting. They would need the TIF though. We would need to modify our TIF district.
Right.
Yeah. Tax increment financing.
Would the town have any role in them getting these other tax credits and subsidies and things? In other words, does the town have any obligation or anything that goes along with that? Or is it just between the developer and the state?
Well, what I know of those programs, it's a point system. So the state's got a certain amount of dollars and it's going to fund a certain amount of projects a year.
Yep.
And they're looking to do them in certain areas. And then if you meet the point system, you get higher rating on the score. Right. And I believe TIFs are in there somewhere.
Okay. Are those the only incentives we're looking at that are being asked from
Well,
the town?
I was going to ask Lehman, the Cranesport application mentions a business opportunity zone, and I haven't looked it up. I have no idea what that is.
Is that the pine tree thing? I noticed in the comprehensive plan, it talked about pine tree, and I didn't think pine tree still existed, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, we don't qualify, or we're no longer, we don't have any property in the area that the state is serving with that program, Robin. And I'm not sure it's called the Pine Tree Zone anymore, but I believe we have any areas of town that are in it.
Didn't we set, this may not be appropriate, or I think the Pine Tree Zone was set up locally to not specifically include areas so that we could do them as needed. That was my understanding several years ago, that the Pine Tree Zone was set up, I don't know if it was by county or so that, it didn't specify an area so that we could split it up as we found it necessary. Roger, you might know the answer to that better.
Well, I don't know that, but I copied Article 8, Section 7 of the zoning ordinance. It says when a BOZ is used in development of a parcel, the permitted uses, design standards, and strict district regulations should supersede and or replace those of the overlaid parcel's existing zoning district. All relevant uses for the proposed development included in the current zoning BR are also included in the BOZ allowed uses. So I'm having a little trouble interpreting that. And maybe it's the same thing, but Cranesport has said that they would like to use that. So
yeah, which is anyone in town that can qualify for the BOZ, it's like it's a separate overlay zone, if you will, Roger, similar to like shoreland zoning. It's just a separate it's a different overlay zone that we allow in certain areas of town. It's not an incentive, a financial incentive from the town, the BOS. This is just more to do with land use, development standards and uses.
Okay.
Which is allowed in which is in the B2, the B3, B4, BR, and the transitional river district. So in all those districts, anyone can apply for the zoning classification as a BOS.
So that's entirely different from the Pine Tree Zone incentive.
Entirely different. Yes. This is not an economic incentive thing. This is just a land use and a development incentive.
Okay.
Wait, can I just, one other thing. We
Yep.
also, in talking about incentives last time, said we wanted to include, they're not like incentive programs, but a couple of these proposals are requesting, one is requesting donation of land and the other is requesting that the town maintain ownership of the land so that they're not having to purchase. So I think those are incentives as far as taxpayers in town would be concerned. I think we need to make sure that those get noted as such.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Good point.
which one? Donation of land was
Habitat
Habitat.
and then
and,
Tannery, Friends of Tannery Park
Friends
wanted,
of Tannery was the town would retain ownership, which in itself is an obligation or an incentive. Yeah. Okay. 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 Anything else, Jeremy?
No.
That falls in that area, or does anybody else? Is anything we missed? And we can kind of wrap that up. I think those two areas we've been asked to identify anything, and so we've got what we need on that. If something else comes up or you think of something, let us know. But we can kind of set that one aside and come back to it if we need to. Okay. So with that in mind, thank you, Jeremy. Let's step back to the agenda that we were sent to us. And I think what we want to do, Jeremy sent you 4 documents similar to what we had last week to look at, one for each proposal. And then from that, between he and Jeff, I think put together the sections of the comp plan and the select board goals that areas that would address or would be relevant to these 4 proposals. So what I want to do is go through them like we did last week, one at a time. And if you've got any thoughts, observations, the purpose of those 4 documents, please use them for your notes, for your questions, for your comments, because that's kind of our working document that we can pull from then to reach a conclusion of the report we're trying to put together. So let's go with that next.
I would add, Lehman,
Yes.
I would just add that Roger pointed out something in the introduction about major challenges, I think, or significant issues.
Mhm.
And I added that to this, and I added what Robin sent around as well to just this. And I think I just did this to be that kind of note where for each project, you guys can write notes or thoughts or comments. And then when you do compile some language for the select board, it's easier to kind of put all that together. That way, whoever's doing that can get that done.
Are those on the 4 documents you sent out? Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They're in there.
Right. That's what I thought. Okay. So that's kind of the next step. So let's kind of do them in the same order we did last week. That's okay. The first one being Northland and Dovetail. And I guess what I'm looking for is through these documents and the comp plan, how do they, what do they touch on that's relevant to that? Any thoughts on the first one, the introduction and?
the first one, the significant issues under the introduction, if you didn't happen to see that, was creating well-paying, quality year-round jobs, Keeping with national trends, the town has an aging infrastructure requiring extensive repairs that compete with schools and everyday public services. So basically looking to not compete on a tax or budget basis. And then there's also Camden needs to take bold, decisive, prompt action in formulating a plan for the future, strong local economy, upgrade, will provide a greater ability to upgrade schools, basic infrastructure. So that was it in there. But it was just, so again, it's talking about economic issues.
Right, well, so there's no jobs being promoted by them. Right? So
No.
kind of
That's correct.
that off.
Any other thoughts on the introduction?
No, it isn't competing with on budget. It's not a budgeting issue for Camden going forward.
Okay. All right, then next, I think, chapter 10, land use patterns, recommendations, questions, and strategies. We had some pages, I mean, some parts of the plan that we called attention to on that. And that dealt with anybody got thoughts on that? Any comments?
Well, down on number 8 under commercial land use, it just says consideration should be given to locating new commercial areas. And I don't think this has anything to do with
This none
commercial.
of it does with, yeah, no commercial in this one at all.
And then also with regards to the TIF on number 9, it says that a TIF is more geared towards commercial and industrial areas or industrial use. And here the use is not either of those, but a TIF is proposed.
Right. And just to add and just to jump on what Jeff said, I mean, that's exactly right, because that's how our TIFs are set up right now. We've got 2 TIF districts. So had we had a TIF in place at the time for affordable housing, I'm sure it would be included in here. Right?
Jeremy, a question for you.
Yes.
For the Cranesport proposal, is there any TIF play for them if they consider that further?
I have not, there's no mention of it in their proposal.
Yeah, but from your perspective, if they had asked for it or should ask for it, is it relevant to their proposal?
Oh, I think it could be. I mean, that's another one we would have to amend, though. Obviously, we'd have to tweak our TIF district to allow this, get it up into this area. But I mean, I think any time there's housing or job creation, I think TIFs in Maine are an appropriate way to try to make those happen on a local level. I mean, we don't have a lot of incentives in Maine for housing and for economic activity. So I think the town should always be thinking about, can we use TIFs differently or make them more productive for a developer?
And another piece in here is talking about residential land use. If the traditional village pattern is to be replicated in the village extension district, which I realize this isn't, but we're talking about doing residential there. It's talking about reducing minimum lot sizes. So it's really addressing density as far as housing goes in just outside the village area. So I realize that this is a BR zone, but I think that's an important point.
Yeah, and then to go on that, to jump to number 12.
Yeah.
The goal of it is to retard the consumption of commercial land with residential uses.
Yep.
And so here we have an existing commercial parcel that in this part of the comprehensive plan, we're saying that we don't want to see commercial properties being developed residentially. So it's
Well,
kind
I
of,
think that's
It's kind of contrary to that.
let's say a balance between the two. So, so they can work together, right? I mean,
Yes.
is this considered the town's, near the town's core? I kind of think it is, but,
It's close enough.
I mean, it's a it's a mile walking distance to the downtown. It's like a half-mile walking distance to a brand new, the new middle school. I got to think it is. It's served on sewer and water. If this was, okay, just talking about housing projects, and, there's talk about Sagamore Farm happening and all that. Sagamore Farm would be too far outside the downtown core to get incentives from the state. But here, I think we're well within the realm of getting incentives from the state, being in a downtown core. I mean,
Plus it's next to the B4 Neighborhood Service District, which has more commercial uses than the BR does.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, is there any, so
Years ago, you'd get points for being close to a housing project close to a school. You'd get points for that. I'm not sure that's how they're still rating these things anymore, but
so is there something that we need to address with that? I mean, that we're the making residential out of commercial, basically, in this proposal.
Yeah.
I mean, is that?
Yeah, that's the red flag to me in this.
Okay. Okay, anything else? All right, let's, no, chapter 11 deals with housing. And that was, I think, page 87 of the comp plan.
This speaks to affordable housing. And so this
Yep.
proposal is proposing affordable housing. So this, I mean, their proposal really fits with our comprehensive plan in this section.
I'm trying to remember, there is one place where we talk, and I didn't have this filled out this way, so there is one place in here where there was a discussion of multifamily, and I think that's an important piece. I just don't remember if that was in this chapter on housing.
I didn't see that, but I noticed there in the comprehensive plan, there's maybe a conflict between what kind of affordable housing. One part says that housing issue is tied to jobs and well-paying jobs that allow enablers to purchase homes. And yet another part talks about increasing housing affordability, which I take to mean maybe rental units, which
Yes.
more like Northland's proposal.
Yeah, rental certainly is more transitional.
Yeah, it talks about first-time home buyers and long-time homeowners and aging boomers who want to downsize. So,
Right.
Yeah, the key is getting people that are transitioning either out of their big house to somewhere else, or somebody that wants to move here and find a house to rent for a year while they're finding their house to buy. And
Yep.
around here, there's nothing to rent
Mm-mm.
year round. I mean, everything's short-term rental. So to move here is really hard, let alone find a job here that pays good.
And having those rentals be in year round is just so important. I mean, I think as we've looked at that, as we've looked at the short-term rental issue, which we've never really gotten into, that's such a big issue that, it's taking all those houses out of the market.
okay. Anything else?
I was just going to throw in there in the regulation and land use talks about increased densities
Mm-hmm.
in there. And I'm just mentioning that Robin mentioned increased densities earlier, I think under the significant issues piece, I think, is when you initially mentioned it, but it is in this piece as well. I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, number 10 on, oh, right there.
Yeah.
And the town should be promoting workforce housing in a positive light. There's an immediate need to organize an affordable housing task force. Interesting.
Mm. Okay. So next, chapter, we can go, let's go on to 8, following the form that you got. Let's go to future land use, chapter 18. We'll come back to 13 later. That's on page 138 in the comp plan.
It's a long chapter.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of it doesn't apply to what we're talking about.
Right.
No,
Yeah, I
I
think-
focused on the Millville neighborhood business, number 7. I thought that was the most applicable.
Yeah.
And then river business.
Yeah, I mean, as Roger
Yeah.
said, you got the B4 over there, and then you've got the river business. So, I mean, you're exactly right there. I mean, the 2 commercial zones that are in the neighborhood.
And Riverwalk. They're
Yeah.
all part of it. Yeah.
I mean, they're not proposing a gas station, but,
Courtney,
and it looks like we could use one.
Oliver.
I mean, on page 134, the purpose of the BR is to provide for the development and redevelopment of lands and buildings in river-oriented locations historically used for economic activity that helps to maintain the environmental and scenic qualities of the river. The recent redevelopment along Batty Street is held to that purpose. There's a couple paragraphs there.
So number 8, river business. I'm just going to read it because it really
Yeah.
just speaks to the tannery. Continue the study of the former tannery site with the goals of 1, getting a solution soon, and 2, getting a solution acceptable to the general public. It's kind of known.
When was this written? 2 years ago? So I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of the language is carried from the previous comprehensive plan.
This
So
plan was
that-
written
that
3
could
years
be
ago.
an artifact still.
This plan
Yeah,
was
well, it was
written,
written
what,
like-
3 years ago?
Well, it's 2015, but it finally got accepted 2 years later.
Okay, yeah,
Right.
all right.
Okay, so soon is kind of a moot point then, right?
Yes, I mean, now we're like a decade later.
Better late than never.
We're trying.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, anything on that one, future land use, other than what we've said?
Yeah, we want it developed.
Yeah, and the last, I have under C, under 11, yeah, it talks about the tannery site in the event that it's developed. The Riverwalk connection between it and the downtown could become an exceptional, well patronized amenity,
Yep.
which we
And
own,
that's,
and we think that's really important.
yeah, and that's being provided for, the ability to do that.
Yeah,
That will forever happen at the tannery site, right? I mean, I think the town knows.
Yeah.
All of them, yeah.
Okay, on to planning and community development, chapter 20. Let's see, I've got page 150 thereabouts. That's where we're looking.
Yeah.
On page 147, it talks about local goals, and one of which is to encourage and accommodate a diverse population, which I think that's something that this plan really speaks to, because there's single bedroom units, there's all sorts of sizes, it's affordable, it's rental. That's how you're going to accommodate that diverse population.
Yeah, it really speaks to number 3, attracting young families.
Right.
Because I mean, that's right next to the middle school. And if you can find an apartment that is affordable, that you could walk to the middle school and walk to a job downtown or hopefully nearby, that's ideal. But it also, in this part of our comp plan, we talk about the balance of maintaining commercial and residential balance. And so this one kind of goes opposing to that, and that here we are taking out one of the last big commercial lots and making it residential. And if this wasn't such a big lot and there was other ones around it, I wouldn't hesitate, but it's really the only big lot in the area that could be a good commercial development. And once you take it, you're not going to get much more around that area. And that's what I worry about.
And it's got all the infrastructure there too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's.
And we don't have a lot of that either.
But it's been available forever.
Yeah.
Well, kind of. Everybody got turned down, so nobody wanted to jump on
Oh,
it.
that's true too.
Jeremy, is there a high-speed internet line that runs along that part of Washington Street now?
My understanding is yes, on 105, yes.
So it's served not only by water and sewer,
Right.
road, but also by high-speed internet.
Yeah.
Does it go up that far now? It used to cut across at the 3-ring binder cut across at Cross Street, but I don't.
I'll have to check. I thought it went up to Mount Batty, but I will check.
And
Yeah,
it doesn't
because they
mean somebody
wired
has
that building. Yeah.
somebody else may have brought it up there.
Yeah. I will.
I-
This is just this commercial property. I mean, the idea of commercial property in town, it's important. I mean, it's important for you about the select board and the town to think about, because, we have industrial zone over on Cold Court Avenue, right? And I'm getting pressure, and the planning board heard from somebody on a project someone commented, public comment on a project where someone just got approved to build a storage warehouse building, that the town really should actually make that area residential, and for housing. So it's coming from both sides. So, I mean, if we're going to go one way or the other, I mean, I don't know. I'm just pointing that out to you because that area over Cold Court, certainly industrial. This area is certainly more residential than industrial or commercial, outside of the B4, the neighborhood market, kind of neighborhood business zone. But there's a lot of pressure for a residential, and I'm hearing it from neighbors, in other parts of the town. So we don't have much commercial land left in town.
Sorry, but did you see the message from Maria? She can't get in.
Let me see.
Yes, I saw it. I'll send it to her again.
All right. Thank you, Janice.
Yep.
This is not to negate that industrial versus residential, but page 148 says the town shall encourage its traditional mix of year-round residents, summer residents, and tourists. Year-round and summer residents are historically valued part of Camden's population. However, there is reason for concern as part-time residents purchase an increasing number of homes in the village, creating vacant structures for most of the year. So that's the piece for residential on this one.
And I would say everyone knows that's just been exacerbated even more than this was done back in 2010 to 15 when this kind of language was about out there. I mean, it's worse now.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So many properties are being bought from people from out of state during the pandemic, is my understanding. It'll be interesting to see what what do they do with those properties? Their intent to move here now, or will they stay here? Will they go? What will happen? Maybe Ellis has a feel for that.
I think right now they plan on staying.
Right. We'll see in
Yep.
3 years.
See how they like it.
They're
I
very
hope it
interested in
snows.
staying.
Just all real bad.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, welcome.
Yeah, I don't know if you remembered, I had another meeting that conflicted with this one, so I'm a little late. Sorry.
We knew that. In fact, you're early. I thought you said.
I am early. My other one got over sooner than we thought.
You're early. Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
I think, Jeff, your point on the commercial versus residential and what Jeremy was just saying over in Colcord too really is so important, because those are both densely populated residential areas, which makes, if something business and commercial goes into either one of those sites, it's really walkable for people. I live in downtown Camden. I used to walk to work all the time. I don't now, but that's really nice. Meg, you can walk to work. It's Steve can walk to work. It's a really nice amenity to have.
Yes.
Were we on the part that said the planning and policy under?
Yes,
Yes.
well, planning and community development, chapter 20. Yep.
Yeah, okay, but underneath it says planning and policy. We talked about number 3. Because I'm having a little problem following, because Robin has been saying 148. I don't have page 148.
No, I printed the chapters. I
Oh.
printed the chapters that we were talking about. That's why.
All right, because I was looking on page 151 that I have, 6, 7, and 8, which is kind of, in the comprehensive plan, it talks about, being cooperative with neighbors, of course, and establishing regional industrial park or retention of manufacturing. Then business and industrial districts should generally hold to their present boundaries, which is kind of what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
those are all things that, have been said all along. And I don't know if that was changed in the 2015 or 2018, whatever it was, but.
I will say the idea on the regional industrial park there, just so the history on that was, there was actually Brian Hodges, when he was here, John, lost his name, in Rockland, was the economic development director there. We had Union Thomaston.
John Root?
No, no, their economic development director. Anyway, we had Rockland, Camden, Rockport, Thomaston, Union, I think Warren at one point were all part of a conversation at looking at an industrial, some kind of a regional industrial park. And it was brought up by John in Rockland because their industrial park is maxing out for space and being able to build more buildings. And so that conversation, we looked at properties, everybody brought in maps, looked at what properties were available. It really, you had to go out to Union to start getting anything that was on a transportation line and all the things you would want in a regional industrial area. And that conversation is what turned into getting Wi-Fi and high-speed internet out into our communities, thinking that rather than an industrial park, what we needed was to be able to get more people here to be able to work from home or to be able to work from small businesses. So having that on here is actually a little outdated, because by the time this came in, that conversation had already sort of bypassed the economic development crowd for the region.
Anything else on planning and community development? All right, we're going to backtrack a little bit to chapter 13, which is the next on the form. That's page 100, recreational opportunities, which says our Camden's recreational needs are fairly well met according to national standards.
Lehman, can I ask a procedural
Yes.
question since I'm coming in late?
Yes.
Are you guys on a specific proposal?
Yes,
Right
I'm
now?
sorry. I should have given you a heads up on that. We're looking at Northland Dovetail, and what we're doing is following kind of what we did last week. We've got 4 proposals. Jeremy sent us today a kind of a sheet to take notes on for each of those. And so we're actually still on the first one, which is Northland, and we're down on looking now at chapter 13, the bottom of that form, comparing that to the comp plan in certain aspects of that. So that's where we are.
Thanks.
Sure. Sorry. Okay. Also talks about development of the Camden Riverwalk in there, which again is, as Jeremy pointed out, is kind of set now. That's not something that's going to go away or be dependent on accepting one of these proposals. So that's kind of a done deal in all 4 of them, is my understanding.
Well, and the Northlands plan shows about a 5,000 square foot playground area to be set aside.
Yes.
Maybe that's token, but it's there nonetheless.
It's interesting, and I remember Pat talking about this. About 30% of Camden is park and green space.
Yeah.
Between the state park is 21%, town-owned is about another 6 or 7%. Mary Spring is 33 acres. I asked, I forgot to call Coastal Mountain Land Trust today. I know they have a lot of easements, but they also own some property in town. Then Roke's Farm and Spear Farm is another 55 acres. And then later in this, someplace it was talking about 56% of the town is considered highly productive woodlands. That was kind of interesting.
On those notes, number 3 addresses as more land is placed in conservation trusts, the impact on the overall property tax base needs to be considered. And so that's, in this proposal, they are going to give us tax revenue, even with the TIF and the 75%. But so this does fit that.
Could I ask, you have a wonderful new middle school playground. What's your board's policy about community use of that? Does that interface at all with this property?
Yeah, that's open to the community when school's not in session. And it's obviously located fairly close to that property. So, the town did just invest in a fairly sizable playground at the middle school.
But not being able to use it during school hours might be an impediment to others, especially very young ones.
Yeah, but that's all summer long.
Well, that's true.
And weekends.
I like going there on weekends. It's great. So then going to number 8, we do have a cyclical evaluation of properties owned by the town. And in the comprehensive plan, we speak to always constantly evaluating those parcels as to if they're providing a value to the town, and if they are not, to get rid of them. And then also piggybacking on that, it's number 9, with incomplete development of the Snow Bowl, we're really considerate and concerned about the town taking something on and it not coming through fruition, it just stalemating and not going anywhere. And so this proposal does not address, there's any red flags for that, but we do have maybe 1 or 2 that does. So that's just another section to be.
Yeah, this one avoids that completely, that issue.
As long as the developer has good credentials.
Correct, yes. Okay.
Has good what, Jeff?
Credentials, good track record, the bank says they can
the ability,
contractors.
Yep.
Okay, capital improvements, page 158, chapter 21.
That suggests a multi-use redevelopment of that site.
What page is that on?
158 is the summary or the whatever, the questions. And is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Community development tannery site.
Yeah.
So I had a question actually about how these things might work together when I read the information about Sagamore Farms and the plan there. And it made me just wonder if, something had been mentioned about Sagamore Farms being used as potential housing. And obviously it's a lot more space than the tannery lot. But I did wonder what seemed to be the preferential use if we looked at it in combination, for instance, with Sagamore Farms as another town-owned property with kind of a vision of some sort or dream. Is it better to have housing in town or jobs in town? Because I wondered, like, should a proposal that focuses on jobs be prioritized anymore because Sagamore Farms is at least some part of what should be considered in the overall planning and thinking for the town in terms of what the best use of Sagamore Farms in conjunction with this potentially is? Just made me wonder which would be preferential. Jeremy?
Thanks. That's a great point. I will say, so Sagamore Farms is not served by town sewer. So there is some limiting factor there on the type of development that they can get in there. Certainly you can do on-site wastewater disposal for, a residential project. Much easier to do those projects if you're not as dense. I mean, trying to do 55 units or 50 units with a septic system will be challenging. You don't get a lot of points. I mentioned this earlier, Maria, where the state, in getting tax credits and going through the state process for incentives for affordable or workforce housing projects, you get points if you're on, municipal utilities within the growth area, walkable to a downtown, walkable to a school. You get points for those things for those residential projects. Not to say you can't have both residential projects or both be commercial projects either, but
Right.
certainly residential is needed in town, and that's certainly a goal. Pretty clear reading the comp plan. Affordable housing's a need, and certainly when you look at the select board's goals and priorities, it's a need there too. So.
And so, Jeremy, and I recognize that is a need that's been outlined. Is that a need specifically in the downtown area?
Well, I mean, both of them. I mean, I don't. It's interesting. Met with some folks on. I met with some folks about Sagamore Farm, and they had walked to the office from Sagamore Farm, and I was like, wow. I mean, I walk too, right? I mean, it's only a mile from Sagamore Farm to downtown Camden, so it's not that far. Walkable, workable neighborhoods and towns are a great thing if you can walk. But we do have built up residential neighborhoods in town. There's no question. So I think it's finding that balance. I think Robin said it earlier. You walk to work, Steve walks to work. There's something really nice about that. People may be able to walk to this property if it's commercial from their neighborhood job.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I
know.
mean, if there are jobs there, people might be able to walk to work because they
Right.
live in town. So
Right.
it's hard to know which one. Yep.
It is.
One thing on all of this that kind of brings up, I mean, walkability isn't mentioned as a goal anywhere that I read. I don't know
No.
that I saw that word anywhere in the comp plan.
Oh, yeah. It was foreign to them when I brought it up.
There was what?
It was foreign to the rest of the board
yeah.
when I brought it up.
It's just not in here.
Yeah.
One of the things we're not talking about, and if walkability isn't one of the issues, is one of the places it talked about the regional industrial park in here. We are a region, and I think, affordable housing needs to be addressed regionally. We do have some business centers here if people are driving. You know, that's another thing on the housing issue is that, you know, what is Camden's part in helping to solve that affordability issue on housing? Are we really going to be an industrial center? Just in figuring out that balance. And it's interesting that walkability is not in here because we've had workshops on it, you know, in town, so.
Okay, capital improvement, I think we're nothing of note there that I have written down. Any thoughts on that? All right. Last two items on the second page, select board goals and incentives. Obviously, the first one, increasing housing affordability. I think this project addresses that pretty well. Better use any thoughts on that?
But just again, to beat a dead horse, but we don't talk about housing diversity really. Well, it does say apartments under objectives. It does. It says in-law apartments, but we don't really talk about diversity of housing, and I think that's something we're missing.
Better utilization of town-owned land, mixed-use commercial and public open space. The tannery as a mixed-use commercial and public open space. And this does not obviously fit in that category.
Yeah. Although the farmer would be part of it, I guess.
Well, okay.
Call that.
Say that again, Lehman.
I said it doesn't fit into that, but Meg makes a good point. The farmer's market and the playground, if that's part of it too, is I guess it is mixed use, but as far as commercial and that sort of stuff, not.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind too that the trail and the 0.55 or 0.75 acres that encompasses the land that the trail is in,
yep,
green space, and no one is taking ownership of that, so that will always remain.
Yes,
as part of this. So I mean, we can always do some things in that area to make that more, you know, usable, if you will. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's a good point. Okay, any other comment? Anything else on Northland?
It actually, I think more than one of these, but marketing Camden externally, it would do that, you know, into a degree of being able to say, we have this diverse kind of housing here that we don't have now.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't have anything like that. Oh, anything that size, right?
No.
Not in the region, really.
No.
Well, I mean, we do have townhouse estates at the Weymouth zone, which are subsidized. And we have those apartments opposite Rankin's and Applewood on Outer Maple Street, Pearl. Well, I'm not sure how many units altogether, but I mean, that's a position that helps not only Camden, but the region in terms of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Okay, let's move on to Cranesport. Same exercise. Let's start at the beginning and head down. Anything in introduction? Cranesport being the Mullins project. This would have the potential, I guess, in the introduction of significant issues of being job creation at some level.
It's also, when you go back to that sentences of Camden is to stand up to or even overcome these strongly negative headwinds, it must make bold, decisive, and prompt action in formulating plans for Camden's economic future. It's kind of bold. It's pretty non-typical of what we've got around here right now. So.
Robin, where were you reading from in the introduction?
That's in
somewhere?
the introduction on the page 7.
Page 7.
On the paragraph below the bulleted issues, the bulleted
Okay.
items, the last sentence or sentence or two.
Yeah, yep, thanks. I also think that a common theme that I read in the report was attracting, young people, young families. And I think that this certainly would help achieve that goal as well. Us making the assumption that many of the people who might fill the spaces, though the workspaces, would be people starting out, younger people. It could be older people or middle-aged people trying to start new ventures as well. But my guess is there would be an attraction for younger people there, at least to work there.
Yes. Anybody else got comments on that? Okay, chapter 10, land use patterns. That's on or about page 82 that we talked about earlier.
On page 80, the goal is to increase business opportunity and community activity within the immediate neighborhood under industrial land use.
Moving down to number 8, it really is gearing us towards paying consideration for new commercial developments and not losing any potential for any such commercial development and an impact, low impact uses. And this proposal really is, I think it seems to be a low impact commercial use proposed. So it really fits with number 8 in the comprehensive plan in this section.
Okay. Robin, repeat what you said about your note on increase. It was page 80. Did you say?
On page 80, item B under industrial land use in the River Business District.
Okay.
It talks about the goal is to increase business opportunity and community activity within the immediate neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a lot going on. I mean, potentially a lot of activity.
Okay. Anything else? Number 11, chapter 11, page 87, housing.
Not really proposing any housing.
No, I was going to say not NA.
Yeah.
Okay. Future chapter 18, future land use, page 133, 34, 138.
Well, on the last page, the Millville neighborhood business. Would assume that would address that.
Yeah. Yeah, that carries basically 7 through 9. It's kind of.
Yeah.
And that's under the Millville
Yeah, and this parcel really is like the heart of Millville. I mean, it created.
Yeah.
It was the mill.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Is it still known? Is this known as Tannery Park? Because I remember hearing it just.
That's its current name, adopted by the select board.
Pardon me?
That's the current, oh, Jeff, maybe Jeff, you know better, Jeremy.
Yeah, it was the select board did vote to name it Tannery Park. However, it is not technically a park. Does that make sense? The town has certain parks. This is not a park, but they did call it Tannery Park.
And somebody, I don't know if it was Mike Mullins, was referring to an industrial park as well, so.
Okay, anything else? Chapter 20, Planning and Community Development. Maria, you mentioned the young families and professionals earlier. And this also talks to that, speaks to that. And that's page 150.
On page 146, the bottom paragraph, Community and Economic Development Advisory Committee. This was us, was formed to develop ideas to enhance, and this was a mission statement that we came up with that we made sure got into this section, but that Cedac was formed to develop ideas to enhance vitality of the year-round local community and region in a manner that considers the town's unique cultural and historic character, promotes, encourages, and facilitates the development of responsible business growth and entrepreneurship, and actively works to strengthen and retain existing businesses. Seems to be hitting some of those points.
Yes, it does.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
It
it's
does.
the only one of the proposals that hits the economic development at all. Really directly.
Yes.
You know, and some of the other things that I read in the plan, and I mean, I think we are literally witnessing it happening right now, is just the concern even for businesses, particularly in our downtown area, the fewer businesses that are geared to year-round residents, the sort of the heart of that cycle becomes of a kind of attracting people. And we've lost some businesses in town. There are a lot of empty storefronts right now. And I mean, who knows what's going to go in there. But I do think having some activity that is more year-round related as opposed to tourist related would benefit our town. So, I mean, I think from that perspective, this would address that need as well. That seems to me that it's probably a growing need. You know, it feels like we might be going more toward a more tourist-based economy in our downtown rather than a more balanced. I think most of the new places that come in tend to be based on tourism and tourists rather than on a year-round community. So this could help address that.
I just point out Jeff's comments last week too, though, about whether in fact these are year-round facilities by the construction. I think we need to, that needs to clarify.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
totally
absolutely.
Totally agree.
Our comprehensive plan is geared towards year-round, good-paying jobs. But I second what Maria said. I mean, as owners of Once a Tree and Small Wonder, and we're year-round for both shops downtown. It's tough, but we do it, and we do it for the community. And not many stores do these days, and not many of the new ones are even going to try to do it. So we need what Maria said.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, recreation and open space. That chapter 13, page 100. We're moving backwards.
proposal, I thought, focused more on the river than the others did in terms of fishing and giving access to it. So give a few points for that.
Yeah, and restoring it and cleaning it and making sure that we get it back to a nice pristine habitat. Yeah, that's key.
I think they were very oriented towards recreation. I mean, they have an ice rink in the wintertime and, I mean, possibility of that. So they were, it looks like they're looking at year round where there would always be something going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like outdoor movies and yeah, it looked like a very community oriented.
Okay.
And once again, this goes back to the town's concern of something going and then it not being finished. And this proposal, I believe, it will get finished with, we have a valid applicant that it seems that the applicant has the funding, has the experience. So there's no real concern on my side from this application that this project wouldn't happen, or it'd stop and then the town would be held like we are with the snowball.
Yeah, and sort of following up on that, Jeff, is the fact that in addition to that, this provides a tax revenue base for the town.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one advantage of those buildings, which are semi-permanent or semi-temporary, however you want to look at it, is that they're scalable. Meaning he can expand as market draws and not overextend at first.
Jeremy, did you look at this at all on building coverage of the lot, percentage of building of lot coverage, how this?
I did not, like I said, I didn't do a full on
right.
view. There's not enough detail on these plans for me to do that. I mean,
I just wonder, talking about density with housing, and that was a good point, that these buildings are flexible and they can do things. That would also depend on percent lot coverage. So
yeah, let me and we are in the B River business, which is pretty one of our more allowable zone.
Yep.
So hold on, let me find it. Bear with me. Maximum building coverage and ground coverage is 70%.
Oh my gosh. But does that include parking, or is that just building?
That's ground coverage. So we call ground coverage, I think in the shoreland zone, is including parking. So, and it's 70% of the lot. So hold on. Yeah, it's everything. Everything that's non-vegetated.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on that? All right. Let's look at select board goals and priorities. Again, the first one, increase housing affordability. I don't think it addresses that.
No.
Better utilization of town-owned land. Redevelop as mixed-use, commercial, and public open space.
Yeah, I think they do that well.
Yep.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yes.
Yeah, when we looked at this a long time ago, one of the things we were looking at, I was asking people, developers to look at it without zoning, pretend zoning wasn't in there, and how could you maintain that property so it didn't become a wall of a building, you know, that you still maintain those views. And this breaks that up a lot, which is nice.
I'm still not convinced that some of these workshop spaces couldn't become small housing units, and this project could meet all of the various needs. You know, and put 2 or 3 low-income housing units in there instead of having 18 workshops, have 14 workshops and a few houses.
What's the square footage of these buildings, these workshops? I know it was stated, I just don't remember.
600 and 1,200, I think.
Something like that.
I thought they were like 1,200 square feet.
Well, so which is, for example, Habitat's building houses smaller than that in Rockland, and that Philbrick Avenue is less than 1,200 feet. So size-wise, they would fit in there and look.
Could be something we recommend for the select board, a question to ask.
Yeah.
If the project would be willing to consider that.
Yeah, and this goes back to my question about them being on Technopost, because if they are on Technopost, then you can't make it a residential unit because you can't plumb it. And so if these had foundations or were slab on grade and were serviced, had water services to them, you could, in the future, make them residential units.
Does it have anything to do with not disturbing the soil?
I think it does in those spots.
Environmentally.
I think that's the
Cost.
driver for that. It's cheaper construction too. I know he's going for low cost per square foot, but yeah, I think Ellis, you're right, that less soil disturbance is preferred.
Is there a height requirement in there, Jeremy, as far as these buildings go in the zoning? For instance, if somebody put something like that in and decided to turn it into live workspace where they'd want to put a apartment on the second floor for themselves while they work down below, you could accomplish both, but that would obviously increase the housing, the height of the housing, the building.
Hold on, Robin. I don't think height's going to be too big of an issue.
It should be less than what was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and possibly even less than some of the other structures on that street, 2-story houses.
Yeah, that's all old mill housing.
Yeah.
And Killam,
Like some of those styles.
Ann Killam's grandfather was an architect, and he designed a whole complex, a whole neighborhood down in, I think it was in Lowell. His name is Walter Killam. And the whole intent was that you could unbolt the roof and pop in knee walls and then lift the roof, create a second floor. And the houses were designed that way. They were designed as 1-story houses, but as the families grew, they could grow the house. Kind of cool.
40 feet.
40.
40.
Yep.
Yeah, that's plenty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the height limit in the industrial zone too.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Are we done with Cranesport? Any other observations? All right. On to Friends of Tannery Park. All right. How does that address the significant issues in the introduction?
Well, no jobs offering, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's reducing the space available for business and industry.
And housing.
And housing.
Okay. Chapter 10, land use. Back to page 82.
Well, no balance, no residential, because there's, well,
Is Meg frozen for everyone else?
Yeah, I missed that.
Okay.
I'm gonna move my. You know.
While she's moving,
Am I still?
you're still with us, but you're kind of in and out.
I think it's your
Yeah.
internet connection.
Reason why we need high-speed internet, right, Rob?
Yes.
Thinking the same thing.
Meg, is Paul on the internet?
So
No,
much
No, I don't know.
there.
Now you're back.
You're back.
Oh, gosh. I don't remember what I said now. It was so long.
Okay, while she's thinking, anything else? All right, let's see. What are we on? Yeah, page 82, land use patterns.
There's no commercial land use in this, right?
Yeah, we're giving up a bunch of
Right.
commercial land.
Yeah, except for farmer's market.
I find it kind of hard to, for this one in particular, to understand what the town is looking for, because most of these recommendations are just simply posed as questions. It's hard to interpret goals within the questions in this particular area. I'm not sure what the desired land use is. It seems that a lot of these questions are asking maybe that question. What is the desired land use? I don't know. Are people seeing places where there are nuggets of direction that the town wants to go within this one?
Yeah,
Well,
I think, go for it, Roger.
Well, we originally had talked about the incentives, tax increment financing, and credit enhancements agreements around the apartment project, which is mentioned in here, but those subsidies don't apply or incentives don't apply to any other development proposal.
And then speaking to like number 12, as you're saying, Maria, this one section is posing questions. The other ones aren't.
Yeah.
What can be done to retard the stop of the conversion of existing commercial space into residential uses?
Yeah.
And that was one that we brought up last time. This doesn't propose conversion of commercial to residential, but it does propose conversion of commercial to recreational.
Yep.
And not being a taxed parcel.
Yep. You know, and again, I don't know where this will come in, and maybe it's sort of in an overall summary that we will eventually give to the select board, but it seems like when we look at the priorities for the town, we have a lack of low-income housing, a lack of good year-round job opportunities. We don't have a lack of open space or recreational areas. You know, so unfortunately, like, I don't think this proposal is addressing an area of need necessarily for the town.
Marie, can I just jump on that? Working at the bank, I have a lot of customers that are more impacted by the lack of employees in the area than they are by COVID right now.
Yeah.
They can't find qualified people that will come here to work for them. And it's all different types of jobs. It really is, housing is an issue,
Yes.
I think.
I would agree with you. I mean, I think that that's true. And I think that the housing and the job issues are pretty well related to each other, because I think that, you know, also to be an area to attract people, we need to have both things. We need to have good ground jobs, and we need to have places for them to live. And I mean, you know, we're fortunate in that we live in a community that has an abundance of recreational opportunities,
Right.
which is a huge attractor for our area in terms of place to live. But obviously, unless you've got the jobs or the housing, only a certain stratus of people can come here just for the recreation because it's a nice place to live. They can just
Right.
afford to come and buy and they don't have to work or whatever. So, I mean, I would agree. It seems to me that a priority in the town is housing and economic opportunity. We face the same thing in terms of finding people. We used to have 30 to 40 applicants for your average elementary grade 2 or 3 teacher, where now we have maybe 6 or 7. So the applicant pool, and there, people aren't just applying from our own area either. I just think, I think there are a number of factors that play into that, but it's been years, long before COVID, that those numbers have dropped drastically in terms of people who are, even seeking employment. And then to get, we have been covering a lot of things internally with substitutes this year because we know there aren't people out there to be substitutes. There just aren't we don't have a workforce. And oftentimes when we talk about with our Southern Maine counterparts, they face very different issues because they do have the workforce that's sitting in Southern Maine in they're just within a school district. It's probably the same in banking. There are just a lot more workers in other
Right.
places than there are here. So I do think it's a thing that dovetails. It's a joint problem. Having good year-round jobs and having housing available.
Speaking of housing, Chapter 11 addresses that, and I think this is an easy answer on that one. Anybody got any observations on that other than what we've said already?
Yeah, it's not really applicable.
Yeah, it's not. Okay, let's on to 18, future land use. Page 138 on the comp plan.
Oh, this goes to 7 through 9.
Yeah.
Well, maintains the Riverwalk, as they all do.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, having a nice park area is always an asset in a neighborhood, but it's just is at the highest and best use.
Anything else? All right, page 150, planning and community development.
I mean, there is a paragraph in there under number 5, community development on page 158 that the third paragraph that says the committee's concluded the site is an important asset to the town's economic development strategy and should be used to attract good paying year-round jobs that are compatible with the neighborhood. Seems like this addresses that fairly well.
Page 158, you say?
Yeah.
We're still talking about the Friends of Tannery Park one, right?
Yeah.
How does that?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's-
Sorry.
Okay.
I was
I was
that's
like,
why-
wait,
like,
Harmony Johnson?
I'm
That's so
working on
funny.
that.
My brain wires got crossed.
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times today.
Okay. I was writing down the number, and when you started reading, it's like, I'm having trouble with that.
Sorry.
Would you like to repeat that and change your?
Yeah, you would change your position on that one.
This, what I wanted to say was this doesn't really address that.
That's what I thought
There
you
we
meant.
go.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on planning and community development?
It just doesn't address it. It doesn't address our goals.
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 13, recreation and open space.
Well, it does provide recreation. It does provide open space. The question is that needed? And does,
Well,
Yeah.
I also think the recreation depends a lot on the fundraising through many years down the road. We don't know what that's going to look like, so.
Yeah, this one goes to number 9 for me immediately, in that, again, our biggest concern is having another snowball redevelopment that just sits stalemate, and the town is sitting there, with another parcel or another project that just isn't going to happen. And this one kind of screams that.
well, and even if it does, I mean, this comes up at budget committee every year. Even if it does come to fruition, what are the costs of maintenance going forward? Where it is a town, it would be a town-owned facility.
Right.
I mean, they do talk about raising money, and they feel that they have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, to me, like, new playgrounds these days, like Maria has a piece of equipment that's all fenced off because an inspector won't let the kids on it. And I don't think playgrounds are what they used to be. And for the town to bring on such a liability, it has, unintended consequences, is my thought.
Well, I think one of the questions that needs to come from the town on this, when it gets to the select board and they're asking questions, is to have a more developed plan on what that is. What is that playground? I heard from somebody during the week, and the comment was that the playground itself was really kind of a ground level playground for younger kids to be, during school hours, that kind of thing. So I think there needs to be more clarification. I mean, we talked about last time that, does a pickleball court fit? How does it fit? There really isn't a site plan there to show what they're doing. So I think there needs to be more, if you're looking at that recreation piece, there needs to be a more developed plan for what it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, back to Jeff's point and kind of to yours, Robin, in terms of questions to ask. I mean, a question that I would ask, is the town prepared to take on long-term management of another park? I have driven by out to the Snow Bowl recently a couple of times, and can't help but notice the tennis courts that has grass growing up all through the tennis courts. And I mean, I think the town is struggling to maintain the properties that it currently owns. And I think a question would be, is the town prepared to maintain and take on more things on top of what they're already trying to do?
Absolutely. I mean, right now I'm working on the stabilization of Shirt Tail because it's eroding. And so we're going to have to stabilize that. So we're going to put money into Shirt Tail pretty soon here to keep it from washing into the river. And then
Cove too, probably.
What's that?
Barrett's Cove probably as well.
that's
Yeah.
where I was going. Barrett's Cove is probably that parking lot, and there's a lot. There could use some work there too. So yeah, it's common with a lot of our parks that they have just gone to the wayside, and I think it happened because of the snowmobile redevelopment and that, so now we just have so much to take another one on. And this proposal is nothing light. This is not like a swing set at Lake Beach. This is, you're talking $100,000, and you're like, where's this? There's too many unknowns.
Well, and I would say too that pickleball, I know is a growing sport, but MRC has bumped up its services. And so we need to take into account how some of those private facilities may or may not serve the need, but that could be additional information as well.
Yeah, good call. We wouldn't want to compete with anybody private.
Yeah, or
Well, that is one, I think that was in one of the things last week was not competing with any other businesses in the area. And Maria, we were talking earlier in the introduction piece, it was, that we're not competing on a tax base with the schools, and, that we're not taking, it's tight enough as it is that we're not adding to the tax rolls for something that competes to things that we really do need, like schools
Mhm.
and everyday public services.
Yeah, I mean, and, quite honestly, although, you had mentioned before, it's always nice to have a park in a neighborhood, but the middle school is very close to that neighborhood, and there's a lot of open space at the middle school and a playground. Granted, it's not geared for, preschool children, but there is quite a bit of recreational opportunity, even pretty close to there, with Seabright Park, the Riverwalk, the middle school.
Shirt Tail Point.
Shirt Tail, yeah.
Which is going to be walkable from Math all the way.
Yeah.
Here.
with sidewalk, exactly.
Very exciting.
Mhm.
Okay, on to chapter 21, capital improvement, page 158. Any observations on that? That's where this comes up, that it's classified as a pine tree zone. We were talking about that earlier, and I see that now where it's not relevant to this, but we were wondering where that fit earlier.
Yeah, that might fit with Mullen's project, but I just don't know that they still have the pine tree zone.
Yeah.
Yep. Shows up how to apply on DEC.
I know. I'm looking at it right now.
Yep, it's there.
But yeah, not relevant to this one,
Not
but it
relative
is
to this,
Yeah.
but it does
for the others.
exist.
Yeah. Okay, it also talks about public-private partnership, but that's more in a economic development, job creation capacity, I would think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, on to select board goals. Again, housing affordability not applicable, and better utilization of town-owned land. Develop as a mixed-use commercial and public open space.
It does do that.
Yep.
It's also, it doesn't really improve it, but I guess it doesn't make it any worse. Improving the health of the McGonagall watershed. There would be potential there, but the proposal itself doesn't really address it.
Okay, anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay. Fourth proposal, Mid-Coast Habitat. Any thoughts? Again, this project is a portion of the property, not all of it. They're looking at some lots for houses. Um, So we're back up to the beginning introduction, page 7.
Nothing.
Well, again, it's not relevant as far as
Yep.
job creation goes.
Right.
Yeah.
Land use pattern, number 10.
Yeah. This doesn't deal with very much of the site, and
Yeah.
really hard to compare with anyone else's proposals because it's limited. If they could combine in some ways we've talked about, that might give it some more relevance. But really, it seems to me that this is kind of non-responsive to the request.
This has the potential, at least from the Friends of the Park proposal, has the potential for that. They address the ability to do housing out of part of it. So if it's a combination with that, but otherwise not.
But we're just supposed, I think Jeremy said to us, we're only supposed to take this proposal, not anything combined with it.
Correct. Yes,
Right.
this
I
is
think
a separate proposal.
Mhm.
And I would add that the RFP asked people to be, we didn't want to put limitations on what we were asking for.
Right.
And said we would entertain sale or lease of any portion, all or a portion of, and
I see.
what they asked, that is what they wanted.
Do we know why they didn't, or does it matter why it wasn't more densely developed, why they weren't coming up with something that utilized more of the property?
I don't, Robin. This was their proposal.
Yeah.
I'd met with them, with Tia a few times and talked to her about the property. And, it may be environmental, it may be
Yeah,
cost wise, it may be, who knows? They got a lot on their plate, but,
yeah.
trying to do a number of big residential projects at the same time, it can be challenging for some
But
entities.
that's a good question I think.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a question to ask. But they do have a lot of other things going on right now.
But you could phase in if you planned a densely developed little community there. You could, say, here's what's going to happen in years 1 through 3 and
Yeah.
whatever.
I do think, I talked to all of the entities that submitted before they submitted, and I do think everyone, is respectful of the town's desire to have the farmers market stay on the property. And I think everyone understands that. And I think it was the same with Habitat. How do you make this work when they don't want to really do parking development? They don't want to, have to invest that they want house lots for some housing, and that's their core function. That's their core mission. And so the rest of it can still be used as the farmers market, and the town can do whatever they want with it. I think that's really what it was about, Robin, but good question for them.
Robin, I joked with Jeremy that that's what I was going to propose because I was most likely to get pushed through and be accepted because so many other things have been shut down that were proposed for this parcel. I was like, oh, we could put a few house lots on Washington and that will probably get through. But this proposal kind of really goes towards number 12 in that we are proposing to take some of this commercial lot and make it residential, which goes against our comprehensive plan and our objective. So that, and we need to rezone to allow residential on that first floor.
Yep.
So, it is what it is. And then we still have the burden of the remainder of parcel that's probably not going to be worth nearly as much.
Yeah, when you have talked about other things, Jeff, sort of leaving a burden on the town, I see this project as, unfortunately, still leaving quite a burden on the town to figure out what to do with the rest of the parcel. So there's still the issue. To me, it seems like if this were approved, there'd be a whole new Tannery Park project, request for proposals, and would be doing this whole thing again because the tannery, most of the tannery park would still be there and have to be figured out how to deal with it.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be worth as much.
And just monitoring what's going on with housing right in front of it. Isn't there danger there? I mean, kids playing in the back of it. I don't know.
Yeah, you would have your setbacks all of a sudden apply. So you would have, you know, buffer spaces and yeah, a lot, your potentials with the remainder of the site would be highly limited at that point.
Okay, next, housing. It does address the whole idea of affordable housing. And in fact, the comp plan mentions partnering with Habitat, so in that area. So,
Yeah,
but it does not address the density box, which I think is important.
all right, 18, future land use.
Oh, this is 7 through 9 again.
Yeah. And 11, I mean, the River Walk would still be the town's responsibility.
Yeah,
Well,
they all have that.
Anyway, that's right. But I mean, to maintain it, they wouldn't have anything to do with that, right?
No. In fact, it's not even, these lots wouldn't even be adjacent to that strip.
Just a reminder, no one, I mean, the Riverwalk will always be the town's responsibility.
Yep.
Right.
No one else's, so.
But everybody else, I mean, a couple of them seem to address that they would want to be responsible for maintaining the river and that area. I mean, that they would help with that. It sounded like to me.
Well, I think that all the other entities are kind of partners, would like to partner with the town in reuse of that area, sure.
Right.
Okay, 20, planning and community development. That's page 150.
No, thank you.
Any thoughts on that?
No.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
going back to something Jeff said earlier, it doesn't really address the emphasis on the commercial part of trying to expand commercial uses in job creation.
No.
Yep. Okay, chapter 13, recreation and open space. Again, I don't think this applies to that because of its limited scope.
Oh.
Chapter 21, capital improvement, page 158.
No, Lehman, if we just go back for a second to chapter
Yep.
13,
13.
yeah, the only thing that it does do with the open space piece of it, it leaves open space for the town still to contend with what they're
Figure it
going to do with it.
Good point. Okay. 158.
So the town spent over $1 million to redevelop this parcel, and this proposal doesn't even propose that.
This is confusing. Everybody is all of a sudden for me moved to.
Is what?
I think Jeremy re-signed on and moved or something, and that shuffled everybody.
Oh, did it? Sorry.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
You're all in the same place for me.
Same with me, same place.
Right. Everybody moved.
okay, over to
Select
select
board.
board goals. Increasing housing affordability. Yes.
Back.
Even
It is small lot development, small house development, increased I keep going back to residential density. I'm just really sorry that they didn't do something more dense in using that property.
Yeah. Second that.
and then lastly on that one, better utilization of town-owned land, mixed-use commercial. Again, it's a small portion of the property, so.
It'd be hard to figure out if it actually benefits because we still have the remaining parcel, and then we have to figure out its value, what it could be used for. So yeah, I couldn't tell you that this actually is a benefit.
Jeremy, I'm just looking something up on the side here. What is the address of that property on Washington Street? Do you know what the number is?
The tannery site?
Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't have one because it's a vacant property. But let me see if I have it.
Well, are you asking for the street address?
Yeah, I was looking for the number. How?
Yeah, it should still have that even if it's vacant. I mean, it's.
Oh. Hold on, let me see if I can get there from here. What are you trying to get at, Robin?
I'm just looking at fiber.
Let's see.
Because I'm looking at one of the questions in here, and that's if there isn't fiber, then it changes an answer.
Yeah.
Something like 116 or 118, I think.
Well,
Yeah,
no-
I think it's 118.
Okay.
Mount Betty Car Wash is 98.
98. Yeah, I just looked that up.
The house next door to it is 110.
All right.
Okay. So that, just so that we know, there is fiber up there.
Okay.
But what I was looking at was a lot of times with LCI in particular, if there's an area that isn't addressed with fiber, that if they can get enough residents to request it, they'll bring it up there. And so if you were looking at something like 55 apartment units that were going to want it, it would have in fact helped increase broadband and fiber to that area. But where it's already there, that's not an issue.
And can you tell, is that LCI?
That's LCI saying that it's available there. Yep.
Okay. we've been through all four of these. And I think we've gotten some good comments and thoughts on that. If you have anything else, either now or you think of it. I think where we're headed with this is we're thinking about putting a small group together to kind of pull all these, capture comments, draft a report, and kind of go from there. And I would like to see if I could get Robin, Roger, and Jeff to work on that with me. Can y'all commit a little more time on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Great. Okay. We need to kind of talk about how to do that. Either more Zoom meetings, which I think the town could set up, or through email. Do you have a preference on that?
I do have Zoom if I don't know if we can meet that way. Legally, if we can meet that way, but I have Zoom too that I can.
I will say we have enough. I can schedule your Zoom meetings should you need them. We can do that with the town now.
Sweet.
Okay. Is there a time, and I can email you offline, so to speak, and identify times if that's easier for you. What I think, if we could start pulling this together, and then we have another full meeting scheduled for next Monday, same time, same station, 4:00, where we could come back together and just kind of wrap up. Not that we would have a product by then, but just other observations and thoughts, and then go from there. Would it be better to just let me get back with you three and schedule a time for us to work as a subcommittee?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, let me do that. Anything else, Jeremy, you want to, any other direction you want to give us?
No, I mean, I think that, I think in summary, I think what Lehman you're asking to do is just to have a small group of folks kind of take everything that everyone's discussed and everyone's reviewed and the comments that were made and put it into some sort of document that you can share with Cedac and then the select board.
Perfect. Yes, that's the idea.
Okay.
And if any of you have thoughts you think we may not have captured, or notes that we could read, if you wrote legibly, please let me, give us access to them, either, email them to us, or we can arrange to get them copied.
Are you saying, Lehman, about meeting Monday as an entire group to sort of summarize? Okay.
Yes. I think next Monday we come back together and summarize, and then we've got, I think ideally, and Jeremy would like to have something for the select board in early January. Is that right, Jeremy?
That is right.
Okay.
And they only meet the first and third Tuesdays. So January 5th is the first, and then it's the 19th. So, I mean, in a perfect world, I got to figure out how Bob and the select board want to handle this, but we got to start moving on this, right? So it's a preference that the select board talk about something on the 5th, or just, I don't know how they're going to handle this necessarily. So the 5th would be ideal to have something to the select board before that. May say, we're running out, it depends what everyone's holidays look like, but I'd like to get January 5th, the select board to at least have the conversation or discussion, because I'd like to get workshops. I think the intent is to have each one of these entities in for a workshop, and it really needs to happen, again, early mid-January. Otherwise, we're going to be just planning for the future, and I'd like to try to keep this on track. So, if we could meet the 21st, summarize everything, and then you guys, the small little group, kind of compile everything, in theory, again, if you're doing it over via email back and forth with each other or communicate that way or Zoom, maybe we can have some summary for the 4th, Lehman. That's my hope.
Okay. Now, what form does that take? Is that a written document that we
I think it
provide
needs to
to
be,
them?
I think it needs to be a written document of some sort, and, yeah, it needs to be something that they can use. The community's got a lot of questions, I know, and people are wondering what's happening with this.
Right.
The sooner we can start talking about it, the better.
Right. Okay.
I think it's important to start too, and I'm sure we do this anyway, but with a summary of what we have been tasked with, what we are and are not supposed to be doing, so that because I think there are questions out there on how we've looked at some of this stuff or why we haven't considered certain things, and I think they were part of what we were not tasked with doing. So
Correct. I think we need to clarify that up front in that document. Good point.
And I would add, it just because I think there's probably some folks watching out there. I know that some folks have got an email or whatever just about raising some questions, and I think Robin's exactly right. I'm going to respond to the individual that did email us or email me and a couple of you, and just say, hey, Cedac was tasked with doing a specific function. That's what they were doing, and they're not. All these other questions will come down the road, and that there's another time for all that stuff. We're not trying to hide anything, do anything under the cover of darkness. We're trying to be as open as possible, but we need to, in order to get there, we need a little kind of summary of each one of these proposals that you guys are doing, and then we'll get there. So,
right.
Lehman, so this group that is going to meet, however you're going to meet this week before Monday, when you come up with a summary, are you going to present it to us before the meeting on Monday? So if we have any questions or we have anything to add to it, or we will see it for the first time next Monday?
I don't know as we'll have it by next Monday.
All right.
Jeremy, I think that might be a little bit much to pull together the document by Monday. Are you?
I think it's probably a little too much for you guys to pull together, but I mean, I think some of you could probably get there pretty quickly on some of this. I mean, all 4 questions, it's all the same stuff for each question. So.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, yes. So we will have some form of feedback for you, but it won't be a polished document, I don't think. Because I think I think one thing we want to hear from each of the members is just kind of a summary of what you think we should include in this. And again, given our task of what we're supposed to be doing, let's keep our comments within that and not try to, as we've said, rank them or push one over the other or whatever, but just identify the questions we have and the shortcomings and possibly the things that they have addressed thoroughly and fully in their proposals. So,
one thing, Lehman, just that we never really touched on was, I mean, we have it indirectly, but the costs or the revenue generated from each one of these.
Yes.
We've never really quantified that, where some may be a cost and some may actually bring revenue. I hate to say it, but like Habitat's 3 lots opposed to 50, 30 to 50. I mean, just the taxes on what that would look like, because there's a TIF involved. I mean, there's a lot of little variables with that. I don't know how easy that is to put together, but I think if I was making a business decision, I'd want to know.
I don't know if we can do that. I mean, I don't
either.
I don't think we haven't.
I'm hoping we just leave a bunch of questions to be answered.
That's
perfect.
Again, I think we say, or at least point out that needs to be addressed, because some of these, what's the if we could put this project back on the tax roll, if any of them do, what does that mean to the town? What kind of money are you talking about? Is tax revenue? or cost going out with incentives and stuff like that. But I don't think we have the capability to come up with those numbers. We just,
I don't know that they're going to be able to do that down the line either. But I think we might be able to do, with Carrie, do something of what's the value of a 55 unit housing?
Yeah.
What's the value of 3 houses that, that are worth $250,000? I think you can figure out a general tax implication of something like that.
And I can get Carrie to start working on some of that. I mean, that's going to be a question that's going to need to be answered anyway, like you all say. So get Carrie working on that.
but is it, I guess what I'm saying is that part of what we owe back to the select board in a report?
No, I don't think so. I think that the questions that you're raising are the right ones, and just include these. I mean, we talked about it. Some are incentives, some are costs. There's, it's a matter of how you look at it. So I think we can get Carrie to just at least look at the tax implications and property taxes that we get from it, from each development, and have that available for the select board. Obviously, it would be a rough number, but.
Right. Okay, any other comments?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to say it's been a remarkable experience listening and watching you seriously go through all this. It's been incredibly helpful for me when I have to look at it from the select board. So I just wanted to thank everybody. It's been wonderful listening and not having to say anything. And another thing, Maria, I like your idea for the school later start time. So I thought I'd answer your survey right now.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, well, let me echo the thanks for all of you spending another almost 2.5 hours today looking at this and seriously considering it and staying on task. And I think I have learned a lot just from listening to and reading, and I appreciate the expertise that's been brought to the table on this. And so thank you for your time. And I will see you guys next Monday, same time. And I'll be in touch with Robin and Jeff and Roger.
Have a nice week, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you so much.